Today we want to discuss some NHL trade talk around Jack Eichel, and could a deal actually end up having to wait until later in the year? We also want to take a look at the situation with the RFAs in Vancouver with Pettersson and Hughes. Could Marc-Andre Fleury be retiring soon? We have an announcement on retirement from Zack Smith, and several PTOs, including James Neal, heading to St. Louis. We'll discuss all that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a lot to talk about here today, a variety of news. I want to kick things off first with the news that longtime Ottawa Senator player, most recently played for Chicago, a 12-year veteran of the NHL, Zack Smith, has announced his retirement from the game of hockey. Smith has been dealing with a lot of back issues over the past couple of years, really. Last year in Chicago, he didn't really play a whole lot. He was basically a part of the Hawks system for 2 years after being traded for Artem Anisimov from Ottawa. But he did spend the bulk of his career in a Sens uniform. I think it was all but around 50 games or so of his NHL career was spent with the Senators. Of course, he was drafted there, developed, and worked his way up and became a mainstay for a long period of time. Of course, Zack Smith was known as somebody who really played hard, great on face-off, good penalty killer, was really a key contributor to the penalty killing shorthanded goals in Ottawa for a long time as well. Just one of those good character guys, well respected around the league, and we just wanted to wish him the best in retirement, and hopefully the back is not giving him too much trouble. I know he does have a young family. He's still in his early 30s, and hopefully he can have good quality of life and not be dealing with that too much here in the coming years ahead. Now, as I mentioned, we also have a lot in the way of PTOs here today. We have news out of St. Louis, New Jersey, Toronto, and we also have a signing in Chicago we want to talk about. The signing in Chicago was a pretty easy entry-level deal. The Chicago Blackhawks did announce that they signed their first-round pick from the 2021 NHL Draft, Nolan Allen. He was the very last pick in that first round, number 32 overall. Big left shot defenseman, 6'2", 200 pounds, from the Western Hockey League. Gets his 3-year entry-level contract. He likely goes back and continues to play there in the Western League for this year. Obviously, didn't really get a whole lot of playing time last year with a lot of junior hockey stuff shut down for a big chunk of the season. Now, when it comes to PTOs, we got some very interesting names on today's list of guys. The St. Louis Blues announced that they're bringing 2 more players onto the training camp roster by a PTO here. We've got James Neal, obviously most recently with the Edmonton Oilers. He's played with a lot of teams around the NHL. Of course, he's played with Edmonton, played with Calgary, he played with Vegas, a longtime player with the Penguins and Dallas Stars. At one point, James Neal was one of the top goal scorers in the league. He's cracked 40 goals before, hit 20 and 30 numerous times as well. Most recently, though, just hasn't really produced like he used to, and the contract he signed with the Flames a few years ago just has been a bigger part of the issue. It's not so much that he's really been that terrible, it's just he's not living up to the contract. So if he was getting paid less, he probably wouldn't have bounced around so much. But at the end of the day here, I think James Neal can probably still contribute to a hockey team, especially on a kind of power play. Still has a wicked shot, and we'll see what St. Louis can do if they want to end up signing him. They're also bringing in Michael Frederick, who ended up playing with a variety of teams. I think he finished out last year in Buffalo. Frederick, I'm not sure what his odds of getting signed are, but both those guys have a lot of NHL experience. Now, leads me to think, though, I wonder where this is going in St. Louis, because right now, as we've talked about here, in the past couple of days, they still have to sign RFA forward center iceman Robert Thomas, and there's a bit of a holdout going on there. Negotiations seem to be contentious from what we're hearing. Obviously, Jordan Kyrou was signed to a $2.8 million 2-year deal, and it sounds like Thomas wants at least that or more, and the Blues are not willing to offer that. It sounds like they're willing to get him, or they'd like to get him somewhere between 2 and 2.5, to 2.3, 2.4 in that range, and that's quite a gap. So, that could be a situation where maybe they're bringing in extra guys to be kind of like a fallback option in case, he's holding out and missing part of the season. And there's also the Vladimir Tarasenko situation as well, which we don't really know how this is going to play out. We know that Tarasenko requested a trade. Nothing has happened. There was a lot of talk that they tried. They had lots of interest, but didn't really get too far. They exposed him in the expansion draft. Seattle didn't take him. And, there's a lot of concern over the shoulder. We've heard remarks from the GM and the coach say that they're, content to take Vlad back in the lineup and he can play and kind of resume things here. But it makes you wonder, with all the PTOs and the veteran guys that are going to be around, like, what are their intentions? Are they maybe confident they're going to try to work out a trade for Tarasenko ahead of training camp? Are they concerned about the Thomas holdout possibility? Could Thomas be offer sheeted? Could Thomas even be traded? I mean, at some point, if negotiations go that poorly, even if it is an RFA, that is something you can consider doing. So it does make me wonder what the Blues are up to. But these are a couple of veteran guys who could certainly be signed if need be, if they're content with their performance, to play a depth role and see where things go. Now, we also heard that the New Jersey Devils have invited Freddie Gauthier to training camp on a PTO as well. Of course, he spent the first part of his career with the Maple Leafs for quite a while spending a lot of time going between the AHL, NHL. Of course, more recently, bounced around to a few other teams. So we'll see if he can find himself a home and a contract with the Devils. And then we just got word shortly before recording this that the Toronto Maple Leafs are actually bringing Nikita Gusev to camp on a professional tryout. That could turn out to be a real nice find for Toronto. I mean, it may not turn out to be much of anything. It's really hard to say. Nikita Gusev has had a ton of success in the KHL. There was a lot of hype about him coming over to the NHL a couple of years ago. Things didn't really work out for the best when he went to New Jersey. He had a good first year, and then things really fell off the rails after that. Ended up getting bought out, got signed by Florida last year so he could make appearances in the playoffs, but didn't really get much of any kind of time or role with them. And now he can't even get a regular contract. He's going on a PTO to the Leafs. And they've also got Josh Hosang, who they announced a few weeks ago as going on a PTO as well. But Gusev, if he can find his game and play anywhere, even like he did his first year in New Jersey, which is only a couple of years ago, not all that far removed from it, that could be a real solid, productive piece for them for their middle six. Because we know that they've got lots of talent in the top six. They obviously have a spot in line 1 and line 2 that they're going to be trying to fill. They said guys like Nick Ritchie, Michael Bunting, Andre Kasha could all be getting looks up there depending on how they want to fill out that lineup. But a guy like Gusev could be a wild card in case those guys don't work out, or maybe even to play more of like a third line role too. So it's hard to say, but this could very well be one of those diamonds in the rough type of situation where they found themselves a player that they got on a PTO and it might work out, get him signed cheap, and maybe he'll really outperform that. Time will tell, but it could be a big pickup. Now, before we jump into the remainder of the video, though, I do need to pause for a moment and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. Of course, with Manscaped, we have a special offer here for all Top Shelf Hockey viewers where you can get 20% off and free shipping on all orders at manscaped.com. Now, of course, Manscaped just launched a brand new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is a fantastic product. They've taken the level up here even again with the skin-safe replaceable blades. It's waterproof, it's wireless charging, has a travel lock on it, as well as a nice light so you don't miss what you're doing. So certainly a terrific product. Now, many people associate Manscaped with their trimmers, which is certainly kind of their top product, but they do have a lot of other great options as well, including what they call the Weed Whacker, which is another trimmer for your ears and nose. And they have a variety of deodorants and sprays as well, which also keep you fresh and are terrific as well. So certainly Manscaped has a lot to offer, and we certainly highly recommend all of their products. So check out manscaped.com and use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. So thanks very much for watching that promotional content. I do greatly appreciate it. Into the rest of today's video. Now I want to first talk about Marc-Andre Fleury, and could he be getting set to announce his retirement here soon? I mean, as we will find out a little bit more tomorrow, but he was recording a podcast with Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick for the 31, I guess we could probably call it 32 Thoughts now. I'm not sure if they've officially changed that. Other podcasts, obviously there's a lot of media going on right now, media tour, and they've been in, I believe they were in Chicago recording a lot of different players. They had a podcast come out just in the last day or two with like Mark Scheifele, Pierre-Luc Dubois, and all those guys on there. Now they've got another one coming out, hopefully I think tomorrow, with this interview with Fleury and others. And there was reports from another Sportsnet writer saying that during that interview that Marc-Andre Fleury was talking about the fact that this very well could be his last season. As we know, it's the final year of his contract. We know he almost retired when he was traded to Chicago, almost decided not to report. I mean, those were the early indications, but he was just going to say he was done, but then came around and decided to honor the contract and play it out to spend the 1 year with the Hawks organization. So, Fleury is still playing at a high level. He was last year's Vezina Trophy winner. I mean, I understand at some point, family is a bigger priority. He's got young children. He's made lots of money. He doesn't really have to worry about that so much now. So clearly there's a lot of other motivational factors at play. He's also won a Stanley Cup too, and that makes a difference for a lot of guys in their career. Sometimes they don't want to give it up because they want to keep pushing for that Stanley Cup, but he has that too. So is there really a lot left for him to accomplish? And I guess the only way the answer is yes is if he really wants to push for another Stanley Cup. And what could that be? Where could it be? It's hard to say. Chicago is expected to be improved this year. Are they a cup contender? I don't think too many people think they are, but you just never know, right? When you get a guy like Fleury as an X factor, can change everything. But it could be interesting to see that this might be like the swan song here for Fleury, might be his final season, and we probably won't really know the full answer to that until we get much later into the year and see. But this could be the end of an era for one of the NHL's top players and people. Now, I also want to talk a bit about the situation in Vancouver. It sounds like the contracts for Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson are really not all that close, and they're not the only ones around the NHL here, but we've touched on some other guys recently as well, like Kaprizov and Tkachuk, and there's not alone here, so I'm not trying to pick on that situation at all, but the Vancouver Canucks might find themselves in a situation here where they may have to end up paying these guys more than they might be prepared or like what they were offering right now. And if they do, they may not have any choice but to make a trade to free up some money. Now, the Canucks do have some options. Looking at their salary cap situation on capfriendly.com, it shows that they have $10.6 million in available cap space, which we know isn't nearly enough to get these two guys under contract. But they also have the contract of Michael Ferland, who will not play this year. That can go on long-term injury relief, and they can get an extra $3.5 million in space. So when you add all that up, it comes to about $14.1 million. Now, there was some talk that Quinn Hughes was more interested in a long-term deal. That's where negotiations were heading in that regard. Maybe looking at an 8-year deal, around $8 or so million is kind of what the AAV was sounding like based on all the rumblings out there, whereas Pettersson could be a shorter term, it could be a bridge, or it could be like a 5 or 6 year deal. It seems like for Pettersson, one of the big factors is a winning team. So he obviously wants a contract that's fair for himself, also fair for the team. They can build around him, but he wants to be able to be in a position to have a good shot at winning and being super competitive each year, and that's a huge concern for him. So obviously part of this negotiation as well is looking at what's around him and what else is out there. Now, I'm sure that, like some of these guys that are unsigned right now, their contracts are being impacted by the other unsigned players and vice versa, and they might all be kind of waiting for somebody to blink. Now, if you look around the league, there's also Rasmus Dahlin, like Quinn Hughes, so they're kind of, different spots really, but, both drafted as top defensemen. They could kind of be used as a comparable for each other to a degree. You've got Pettersson, Kaprizov, Tkachuk. They might all kind of be waiting for each other to blink here to see who's going to sign first, so they can use that as a comparable to maybe get more money. Like, it might not be crazy to think that once we see one of those deals go down, that the other ones move right along and get done too, right? We've heard talk about Pettersson's deal being, I've heard different numbers out there. I've heard anywhere from from 6 to 10 is what I've seen, and that's a big range, and it really boils down to the term. The term is going to determine a lot here. The most general consensus I've seen on term is probably, if it's a longer term, probably 5 to 6, and it could even be maybe like a 3 as well, right? So they obviously don't want to, I'm not sure Pettersson wants to lock up too long, but at the same time, he wants to, make sure that the Canucks can win here. So it's a tough balance, but at the end of the day, if they both end up paying these guys over $8 million each, which is a real possibility, a trade might become necessary. Now, with the space they have on Cap Friendly, they do have the options to demote a few players and contracts to the minors to free up a little bit of extra room, but it would still be super tight, and it could trigger another trade. I don't know what that would be right off the top. I mean, if you look at the roster, there's nothing too obvious out there. I mean, even if they moved one of the smaller deals at 1 to 1 point something million, something in that range might be something that we might have to see here. But right now, there's no indication these contracts are close, and we could end up seeing a trade to create space to get it done if they're going to have to end up overpaying more than they seem to be prepared to right now. Now, when it comes to Jack Eichel, there was an article in The Athletic today by Eric Duhachik talking about the situation. He did a mailbag type article, and in his opinion, he thinks, and it does make sense, that a Jack Eichel trade as much as there's teams out there that are still kicking tires, they're still keeping in touch, there's still conversations and dialogue being had. Really, ever since Labor Day, things did pick up a little bit, but that one of the bigger concerns is his health, and it might not happen now. It just might have no choice but to wait. And if they have to wait, then the problem here is the Sabres and Eichel's camp are going to have to agree on the procedure and how he gets himself healthy so that he can get on the ice, showcase himself, and then hopefully get moved. So how that's all going to work out is really, really difficult to say. Like we've talked about a few times recently, we talked about the possibility of a Vegas trade. To me, that makes a lot of sense. That we talked about with Vegas offering up 4 to 5 pieces between Riley Smith, Nicholas Hague, Peyton Krebs, first round pick. Like that deal to me makes a ton of sense for Vegas, and I can see that maybe being something seriously considered. The other team, like I said, is another big X factor is like Minnesota and Calgary. I'm not sure that teams like the Rangers, the Ducks, or even the Kings really feel all that intrigued anymore. I mean, I think to a degree, Anaheim would probably still come back into the conversation, but I kind of lost faith in the real. I think the Kings are basically fully out. I think the Rangers are somewhat out. As reports surface of them talking extension with Mika Zibanejad, you have to think that if that gets done, that's gonna put them out, right? And then in the Flame situation, well, they haven't really done a big trade. That core is still together, which I know that they probably don't really want, but and they haven't extended Johnny Gaudreau yet either. So you have to think that a Gaudreau trade is still a possibility, and that could end up being involved in some capacity too. I don't know if the Flames are really better by moving Gaudreau and having Eichel. That's a whole different dynamic, but still, it's a situation where some of these moves could all be connected together, and it wouldn't be completely shocking, though, if this writer in The Athletic is right. It makes sense that the Eichel and the Sabres might have no choice but to agree on the recovery process, on the surgery, to get that looked after before a trade is done. So as much as I know we've talked about it a lot, there's a lot of teams connected. It's one of the hotter topics around the NHL, but it really, realistically, could be something that drags out much longer, and it may not take place for another, 3, 4, 5 months. It's really difficult to say. But let me know what your thoughts are on Jack Eichel. Does it make more sense that a trade happens later than before camp or before the season? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.